Imagine it is 4:00 p.m. on a Friday. You're finally winding down for the week, right?
Brightest time in the week.
Exactly. So your lead accountant tries to open the payroll file to finalize checks, and instead of a spreadsheet, a black screen pops up.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And it's demanding $50,000 in Bitcoin. Every single file on the network is locked. Your heart just completely drops into your stomach.
Right. Absolute panic.
Total panic. So what is the very first thing you do? Because statistically speaking, based on the stack of sources we're looking at today for this deep dive,
Yeah.
what you do in the next 60 seconds will literally determine if your company survives the year.
It is a terrifying scenario for sure. But, I mean, it is the reality of the digital landscape right now.
Yeah.
We have this comforting industry-sold idea of absolute prevention, you know? We buy the firewalls, the complex password managers, the antivirus software.
We just keep buying tools.
Right. And we like to believe that if we just stack enough bricks, the bad guys will eventually give up. But the core mindset shift across all our sources today is basically accepting that eventually prevention fails.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if cybersecurity is usually sold to us as this giant impenetrable wall, this deep dive is entirely about what you do the moment someone simply walks through your front door.
Exactly.
So we're looking at a framework called CIS Critical Control 17, alongside a really highly actionable strategy known as the Micro Incident Response Plan. But before we get to the pure panic of that Friday afternoon scenario, the sources just keep mentioning CIS and these things called IGs. What actually is that?
Right. So CIS stands for the Center for Internet Security. Think of their controls as the gold standard, universally accepted checklist for defending a network.
Okay.
And they break organizations down into implementation groups. That's the IGs. So IG1 is your small, 10-person mom and pop shop or a local real estate agency, whereas IG3 is your massive, complex, global enterprise. And Control 17 specifically deals with incident response management.
Which is what happens after the wall falls.
Exactly. The underlying philosophy here is that when an incident actually occurs, whether someone clicks a phishing email or a laptop gets stolen or ransomware hits, your very first question should never be, how did this happen?
Which is, let's be honest, completely human nature. Like, you see a breached system and you immediately want to know who left the digital window open.
Oh, it's completely instinctual. But it is deadly in a crisis.
Really?
Yeah, the first most vital question must always be, what do we do right now? Because in a cyber emergency, time is your most expensive asset.
Right, the clock is ticking.
It is. Fast, decisive response equals less downtime, less financial loss, and crucially, less reputational damage. The organizations that actually survive a breach are the ones that mapped out the response long before the attackers ever succeeded.
Okay, so if survival comes down to planning, what does a surviving company actually do in hour one of a crisis? The CIS framework breaks the macro response down into 6 phases.
Right.
Prepare, detect, analyze, contain, eradicate, and recover. Plus, there's a sort of unofficial 7th step, which is learn.
Yeah, that learning phase is huge.
But looking at that list, I get detecting the problem and analyzing it. But why separate contain and eradicate? Why not just blast the virus off the server the absolute second you find it?
Well, that's where the actual technical mechanics of an attack come into play. If you jump straight to eradicate, say, your IT team just starts frantically deleting malicious files while the infected computer is still connected to the internet.
Yeah.
The malware script is often just running in the background, quietly re-downloading itself from a remote server faster than you can even delete it.
Oh, wow, so you're just fighting a ghost.
Exactly. Trying to eradicate a threat without containing it first is, it's like trying to bail water out of a sinking boat without plugging the hole in the hole first.
That is a great analogy.
Right. Containment is plugging the hole. You isolate the machine, you sever the network connection, and you trap the threat. Only then do you actually eradicate it.
That makes a lot of sense. You have to stop the bleeding before you can do the surgery.
Yes, exactly.
And looking at the foundational rules for the smallest organizations, the IG1 safeguards, it emphasizes something that sounds almost incredibly basic.
Yeah.
It says someone must own incident response.
Yeah, it sounds obvious, but if we connect this to the bigger picture, A lack of designated ownership triggers the classic bystander effect.
Like everyone assumes someone else is doing it.
Precisely. If leadership just vaguely states that, IT handles security, then during a massive data breach, you end up with the network admin waiting for the business owner's permission to shut down the servers.
Right.
And then the business owner is waiting on their managed service provider to explain the problem. And the managed service provider is waiting for authorization from the CEO.
Oh, man. Just a giant circle of waiting.
And you lose hours to bureaucracy. Without a single designated owner who has the pre-approved authority to just pull the plug, the damage just spreads.
The sources also point out under IG1 that you have to establish a process for reporting incidents that is easy, fast, and completely free of blame.
Yes, that is so critical.
I found that free of blame part really fascinating. Why is an HR concept like a blame-free culture a critical cybersecurity defense?
Well, it really comes down to human psychology. I mean, imagine an entry-level employee, let's call him Dave.
Okay, Dave.
Dave accidentally clicks a highly sophisticated phishing link. If Dave knows the company policy is to immediately fire anyone who causes a security breach, what is he going to do?
He's going to stay completely quiet. He'll just close his laptop, go get a coffee, and pray it just miraculously goes away.
Precisely. He hides it. And because he hides it, the security team loses that most critical window for containment we just talked about.
Because they don't even know there's a hole in the boat.
Right. So by the time the automated systems actually detect the ransomware spreading across the shared drives, like 3 hours later, it is way too late.
Wow.
A culture of blame literally turns a 5-minute isolated IT fix into a $5 million company-wide disaster. Employees need to know they will be rewarded for raising their hand immediately, not punished.
Okay, wait. I'm looking at this response team list in the IG2 safeguards, and I see public relations, human resources, and legal counsel.
Yep.
If a hacker locks my servers or steals my data, why on earth am I calling human resources? I mean, it's a computer problem.
That is such a common misconception that cyber incidents are just IT problems. They aren't. They're existential business crises.
Right.
When a major breach happens, the technical team is really only solving one piece of the puzzle. If you don't have PR, HR, and legal in the room from the very start, you get a chaotic chorus of 20 voices instead of a single unified message.
Paint a picture of that for me. What does that chaos actually look like if I don't have those teams involved right away?
Okay, so an IT technician, just trying to be helpful, might accidentally email a major client saying, hey, we might have lost your data, before the forensic team has even confirmed what was actually stolen.
Wow, it's a nightmare.
Or a rogue manager might send a panicked all-staff message that ends up leaked to the press.
Which just destroys the company's reputation.
Exactly. By assigning these roles in the prepare phase, you ensure that human resources is exclusively managing internal employee communications and preventing a panic. Public relations is carefully crafting the external message to protect customer trust.
Yeah, legal.
Legal is calculating regulatory exposure. I mean, depending on your industry and jurisdiction, you might have a strict 72-hour window to report a breach to government regulators. IT cannot manage all of that while actively fighting off a hacker.
So you are basically orchestrating the chaos. You let the tech people fight the fire, and you let the communication people handle the crowd.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Okay, so we've established that the enterprise needs this massive, coordinated macro plan to handle everything from technical recovery to government regulators.
Right.
But how does a 200-page corporate incident response policy actually help Dave in accounting when his screen turns black?
It doesn't. And that is the massive, glaring flaw in the traditional cybersecurity response model.
Yeah, the sources are pretty brutal about this. They say traditional incident response plans are written by lawyers and network architects for other lawyers and network architects.
Yes. They are full of technical jargon, they're deeply theoretical, and they are utterly useless to a panicked employee in the middle of a Friday afternoon crisis.
Because if Dave realizes he just wired $50,000 to a scammer, handing him a massive PDF on enterprise risk management is completely pointless.
Exactly. I mean, his adrenaline is spiking, cortisol is flooding his brain. Dave is not going to read the table of contents, let alone execute a multi-phase corporate protocol.
Which brings us to the core innovation presented in the sources. The Micro Incident Response Plan, or MIRP, developed by CyberOpSource.
Yes, the MIRP.
It's a one-page, highly specific role-based guide that tells an individual employee exactly what to do in the first critical minutes of a specific emergency. And here's where it gets really interesting. To me, this MIRP concept operates exactly like the safety card on an airplane.
Oh, that is a brilliant way to visualize how it functions under pressure.
Right, because when the cabin loses pressure and the oxygen masks drop from the ceiling, the flight attendants don't start passing out a 500-page pilot's manual on aviation mechanics.
No, they definitely do not.
They rely on the fact that you looked at a laminated one-page picture card in your seat pocket that simply said, put your mask on first, then help others. It's immediate, visual, and it requires zero translation.
What's fascinating here is if we look at the interaction between the two plans, we can actually think of it like the human nervous system.
Okay, how so?
Well, the micro-incident response plan is your spinal reflex. When you touch a hot stove, your hand instantly jerks back. You don't think about it right. It's a localized, immediate action just to stop the damage.
Yeah.
The macro plan, CIS Control 17, is your brain processing the pain a second later, realizing you need to run your hand under cold water, assess the burn, maybe drive to the hospital.
I see.
So the MIRP does not replace the enterprise plan. It simply distributes the immediate containment to the edges of the organization. So Dave in accounting can pull his hand off the hot stove without needing to call a committee meeting first.
So how do we actually build these local reflexes? Like, how do we build these one-page safety cards for different departments?
Yeah.
The framework lays out the exact anatomy of a microplan, and it basically consists of 5 core elements.
Right.
Trigger, immediate actions, do not do instructions, escalation path, and documentation requirements. Let's run this through a real-world scenario from the material.
Let's use the finance department. They are a highly targeted group because, well, they hold the keys to the kingdom.
Right, the money.
Exactly. So we can build a MIRP for suspected payment fraud. First is the trigger. What activates this specific safety card? For finance, the trigger might be an email from an executive requesting an urgent, unusual wire transfer, or a vendor suddenly asking to change their direct deposit banking details.
Okay, so the alarm bell has officially rung in the employee's head. Next up is the immediate action section.
And this tells them what to do right this second. The MIRP explicitly states, pause the transaction, do not process it. Verify the request by calling the vendor or executive using a known, trusted phone number.
And absolutely not the phone number listed in the suspicious email.
Definitely not. That is how they get you.
Then we hit the escalation path.
Yeah.
The plan specifies exactly who needs to know. It might say to contact the finance director and the IT help desk immediately. Then the documentation requirement.
Right. What evidence do they need to preserve?
Yeah, so the MIRP instructs them to screenshot the email, save the sender's actual email address, log the exact time it was received, and clearly state whether any funds actually left the account.
Let's look at another scenario just to see how adaptable this is. Say, a remote worker with a lost laptop.
Well, that happens all the time.
All the time. So the trigger is simple. You are traveling, and you cannot physically locate your company laptop for more than 15 minutes.
The immediate action there would be completely different than finance, though.
Exactly. The immediate action here is to call the 247 IT emergency line and request that all your active session tokens be revoked.
What does that do?
That instantly logs your laptop out of Microsoft 365, the VPN, and all the company portals. It cuts the cord. Then the escalation path involves notifying your direct manager and filling out an IT asset loss form.
I want to zero in on the third element of the MIRP, which is the do not do instructions. I totally understand giving people positive actions, but why do we need to explicitly tell adults what not to do on a one-pager? I mean, isn't it incredibly obvious that if you suspect payment fraud, you shouldn't reply to the scammer asking if they are a scammer? Or if you lose your laptop, you shouldn't just ignore it?
In a calm, rational state. Yes, it seems totally obvious, but remember Dave.
Right, panicking Dave.
Dave's brain is just flooded with panic. The do not do section exists because human instinct during a cyber crisis is almost always fundamentally wrong.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. In the lost laptop scenario, the natural instinct is embarrassment. The employee thinks, I probably just left it in my spouse's car. I'll just wait 24 hours to see if it turns up before I sound the alarm and look stupid.
Yeah, I can see that.
So the MIRP explicitly says, do not wait to report the device missing. Revoking access now prevents data theft and can be easily undone if the device is actually found.
The sources mention an even more critical do not do regarding ransomware. If Dave's screen turns black with a ransom note, the average person's immediate visceral instinct is to dive under the desk and just rip the power cord out of the wall.
Yep, kill the machine, kill the virus.
Exactly. Which sounds logical.
Which is actually the worst possible action you could take.
Wait, really? Why?
Because when a computer is running, crucial forensic evidence is stored in its volatile memory, its RAM.
Yeah.
This includes the decryption keys the attackers might have used, the network connections they established, and even the malware payload itself. But volatile memory requires continuous power. The second you rip that plug out of the wall, the RAM is just wiped clean forever.
Oh, wow. So you're accidentally destroying the exact digital fingerprints the forensic investigators need to figure out how the attackers bypassed your security in the first place.
Exactly. And the sources tie the preservation of that evidence directly back to CIS Control 8, which focuses on audit log management.
Right.
You absolutely need that raw data to piece the timeline together.
I had no idea. Therefore, the micro-incident response plan for ransomware specifically overrides that panic instinct. It tells the employee, disconnect the computer from the network, like unplug the yellow Ethernet cable, turn off the Wi-Fi, but do not power the machine off, unless explicitly instructed to do so by the incident response team.
Right. It preserves the forensic evidence while simultaneously cutting off the malware's ability to spread to other computers.
It completely short-circuits the bad panic instinct by replacing it with a clear, safe, physical action. Unplug the internet cable, leave the power cable alone.
Exactly.
But knowing what to put on these one-pagers is great in theory. How do we make sure people don't just stare blankly at this laminated card when the real crisis hits?
Well, the sources outline a methodology to build that muscle memory. Building a microplan basically involves 4 broad steps. Step 1, who to call. This establishes your emergency contact list.
Right.
Step 2, spot the problem, which is the detection phase.
No.
Step 3, stop the damage, the containment phase. And step 4, fix and learn, moving into recovery. And honestly, you do not have to reinvent the wheel here.
No.
No, the documentation points out that you can download highly effective MIRP templates from organizations like Google Cloud or security firms like FR Secure.
But having a filled-out template sitting in a binder on the HR director's desk is not the finish line. Under the IG2 and ID3 safeguards, the framework insists that a plan that hasn't been tested is nothing more than a dangerous hallucination of security. You have to run tabletop exercises.
A tabletop exercise is essentially Dungeons and Dragons for the corporate world.
Corporate D&D, I love that.
It really is. It is a guided simulation. You gather your leadership, your department heads, and your IT provider in a room, and you throw a hypothetical disaster at them just to see how the plan holds up.
So you aren't just asking what if, you are actively role-playing the Friday afternoon disaster.
Yes. You introduce a scenario. Okay, it is 4:00 p.m. on the last Friday of the quarter. Amazon Web Services just went down, and our main client database is totally inaccessible. The IT manager is currently on a flight to Hawaii and cannot be reached. Go.
Wow, just throw them right into it.
Exactly. You force the team to walk through their MIRPs and the macro plan step by step, and you will instantly discover who doesn't know their escalation path, which phone numbers are out of date, and where the actual bottlenecks in decision-making are.
Right.
You expose the fatal weaknesses in your response plan in a conference room, rather than exposing them to a Russian ransomware syndicate.
The sources provide some incredibly direct, hard business questions that you, the listener, must ask your internal IT team or your outsourced managed service provider today.
Yes, do not wait on this.
Questions like, if our primary email tenant is breached this afternoon, what happens in the first 10 minutes? Who do we call if this happens at 2 a.m. on a Sunday? How quickly can we actually isolate an infected server from the rest of the network? Who is legally responsible for notifying our clients? Does our cyber insurance policy mandate that we use their specific forensic teams before we start our own recovery?
This raises a critical litmus test for business leaders. Ask your IT provider those exact questions. If they stammer, if they say, we'll figure it out, or if they don't have a clear, documented process readily available, your organization is absolutely not prepared for a real incident. Prevention is an IT problem. Response is a business survival problem.
So what does this all mean? To me, running these tabletop exercises and rigorously questioning your IT provider is about building that nervous system reflex.
Exactly.
You wouldn't wait until your hand is actively burning on a hot stove to start reading a biology textbook about nerve endings. You need the reflex programmed in advance. If your team doesn't have clear answers, you are walking blindly into a digital fire.
You are building organizational muscle memory. When the smoke appears, you want the response to be automatic, coordinated, and completely devoid of panic.
So, to summarize our deep dive today, the harsh reality of the digital world is that you cannot prevent every single cyber attack. No wall is high enough and no software is perfect enough. Someone eventually is going to walk through your front door.
It's inevitable.
But you retain complete control over your response. By blending the strategic, big-picture coordination of CIS Control $17, ensuring your communication, your ownership, and your legal bases are covered with the highly targeted, localized reflexes of a micro-incident response plan for your individual employees, you ensure that a single sparked match doesn't burn the entire business to the ground.
We've spent this entire deep dive mapping out how a business should respond to a crisis. We've talked about equipping the finance team, preparing the remote workers, and interrogating the IT provider.
Right.
But connecting this to your own reality leaves me with a final thought for you to consider about your personal digital life.
Ooh, okay.
If you woke up tomorrow morning, reached for your phone, and realized your primary personal bank account was drained and your personal email was completely locked out by a hacker, do you actually have your own personal micro-incident response plan? Do you know the exact phone number to call, the exact accounts to freeze, and the exact passwords to change first? Or is your current personal strategy just to panic?